Get your filthy hands away from my table. The words cracked across the ballroom like a whip, sharp, humiliating, meant to sting. The man in the pristine 10,000 tuxedo shoved Jordan's hand aside as if she were an insect, not a guest. Jordan Wells inhaled slowly, steadying herself. "I'm so sorry, sir," she said, her voice quiet but level. "I'm sorry?" Richard Braftoft barked out a laugh that dripped disdain. "You should be sorry for even being here." His three companions, old money elites with matching egos, laughed on cue. Their amusement sliced through the marble hall like broken glass. To them, this wasn't a scene. It was entertainment. Jordan kept her tone soft. "I'm a registered guest, Mr. Braftoft." "A guest?" He looked her up and down, her navy dress, her simple jewelry, her steady posture, then smirked so wide it almost split his face. "In that cheap dress?" He snatched a bowl of steaming lobster bisque from the buffet. "Let me give you something you can afford." Before Jordan could react, he tipped the entire bowl over her head. The heat struck her scalp like a brand. Thick orange cream coated her hair, rolled down her face, soaked into her neckline. Chunks of lobster clung to her shoulders as the ballroom erupted, not in outrage, but in horrified, voyeuristic silence. Braftoft howled with laughter. "Now you look like you belong in the kitchen, where you came from." Jordan didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't give him the show he wanted. She simply lifted her chin, wiped her eyes with a napkin, and said, "Thank you, Mr. Braftoft, for showing me exactly who you are." Something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, maybe, but arrogance smothered it instantly. 7 phones recorded the moment. Dozens of witnesses stared. No one intervened. Jordan walked away with the poise of royalty, soup dripping from her heels, as if she left a signature behind with each step. Braftoft turned to his friends, laughing so loudly, one chandelier trembled. "She'll forget about it by tomorrow," he said confidently. "People like her always do." He had no idea the storm he had just created. He had no idea who she really was. But long before that bowl touched her hair, Jordan Wells had already begun building a trap, a billion-dollar one. And tonight, he'd just fallen straight into it. 48 hours before the soup, before the humiliation, before the internet erupted, Jordan Wells woke in her modest Brooklyn brownstone with a plan already forming in her mind, one she'd been polishing for 5 relentless years. Her alarm buzzed at 6 a.m. She silenced it with a practiced swipe and swung her legs out of bed. Sunlight spilled across shelves of business strategy books, old leadership guides, and binders thick with research. A framed photo watched her from the nightstand, a teenage Jordan beside her mother, Evelyn Wells, smiling, tired, proud. That photo was the reason everything was set in motion. Jordan pushed through her morning routine with deliberate calm. Coffee brewed in a simple French press, no gleaming machines, no designer mugs. She stood by the window, tablet in hand, rehearsing her pitch for the CEK deal. Her voice firm and controlled. Brooklyn murmured below her. Car horns, footsteps, sirens, life waking up. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maya, her longtime assistant. Maya. "Braftoft confirmed for the charity gala. This is it." Jordan's jaw tightened. Jordan. "Good. Let's see who he really is." Across town, Jordan's office didn't look like it belonged to someone with an $8 billion portfolio. A plain sign read, J. Wells Consulting. Inside, Maya slid a thick folder across the desk. Her expression was a blend of triumph and grim satisfaction. "The due diligence report on Braftoft Properties," Maya said. "Everything you suspected, it's all here." Jordan flipped through the pages. Unethical evictions, silenced complaints, manipulated valuations, a pattern of discrimination so deep it stained every file. "And the CEK merger paperwork?" Jordan asked. "On his desk right now," Maya said. "Still doesn't know CEK's parent company is... you." "Good," Jordan murmured. "Keep it that way. I want to meet him face to face before I take everything from him." Maya's voice softened. "Jordan, building 447 Riverside Drive, the one where your mother worked. He still owns it." Jordan stared at the folder, her breath caught in her chest. He fired her mother, terminated her when she got sick, cut off her insurance. Evelyn died 3 months later. all because a billionaire decided she was disposable. Jordan closed the binder. Her voice, when she spoke, was quiet steel. Tomorrow, Maya. Tomorrow he learns what it costs to treat people like they're nothing. But even Jordan couldn't predict what would happen once the world saw his cruelty, and how millions of strangers would join her fight by sunrise. The Manhattan Grand Ballroom glowed like a palace carved from crystal. Chandeliers blazed above rows of marble pillars, and every inch of the room reeked of old money and cold privilege. Women drifted by in gowns that could fund an entire college semester. Men compared watches worth more than some people's cars. Jordan arrived not in a chauffeured limo, but in a simple rideshare. She stepped out quietly, navy dress straight, shoulders steady, eyes sharp. Inside, the registration desk was manned by a young woman with a taut smile and eyes that flicked over Jordan as if calculating her worth. "A name?" she asked. "Jordan Wells, guest of Councilwoman Patterson." The woman scrolled with exaggerated slowness, tapping her screen as if searching for a ghost. "I don't see you," she said with a sigh of impatience. "Are you sure you're at the right event?" Jordan showed her the confirmation email. The woman barely glanced before finding the name. "Oh, there you are." No apology, just a stiff name badge slapped on the counter as if it might contaminate her fingers. At the coat check, it happened again. An older white attendant didn't even look up. "Staff coats are downstairs, sweetheart. I'm a guest." The attendant finally lifted her eyes, embarrassment flickering across her face. She handed over the claim ticket with a forced smile. Jordan walked into the ballroom every inch of her posture, calm but aware. Aware of the stares that lingered just a little too long, the whispers that paused when she passed the mental math people performed, when they saw a black woman walking in alone. She found a quiet corner and scanned the room. Then she saw him. Richard Braftoft stood near the bar, surrounded by sycophants, his voice carried easily, loud, confident, dripping with smug superiority. "We're improving the neighborhood," he boasted, bringing in better demographics. "Some people complain, but progress requires sacrifice." Laughter rose around him. Jordan moved toward the buffet when the crowd thinned. She picked up a plate, reached for a serving spoon, and a hand struck hers away. "Watch it!" Braftoft snapped, stepping beside her like a storm in a tuxedo. "Do they really let anyone in here now?" Jordan steadied her plate, refusing to bow under his glare. "I apologize, sir. I didn't see you." "Of course you didn't! You people never look where you're going!" His friends hovered behind him, half laughing, half wincing. Jordan breathed in, calm, measured. "I'm a guest, just like you." Braftoft's eyes glittered. "Oh, sweetheart, you and I are nothing alike." And the room shifted again. But no one in that glittering ballroom knew that within hours the world would be watching, and Jordan's name would trend alongside a billionaire's downfall. Jordan had never been more aware of a room turning into a stage. The music softened to a hum, conversations dimmed, and people angled their bodies subtly to watch the unfolding showdown near the buffet table. They recognized the man at the center, Richard Braftoft, the self-declared titan of luxury real estate. And they recognized the danger in his expression. "You don't belong here," he said loudly, making sure people heard. "Events like this are for those who matter." "I was invited by Councilwoman Patterson," Jordan replied, her tone calm. Braftoft rolled his eyes. "She always drags along her diversity projects." His friends snickered. A few guests gasped softly, but no one stepped forward. Jordan tried once more. "Perhaps there's a misunderstanding." "Oh, there's no misunderstanding." His voice grew louder, sharper. "The staff entrance is in the back. Why don't you run along and see if the caterers need help?" Humiliation simmered in the air, thick, toxic, intentional, and then he made his grand decision. Braftoft grabbed a bowl of lobster bisque from the table. The steam curled upward, almost warning her. Jordan didn't step back, didn't shield herself. She simply held his gaze. "You want to be served?" he sneered. "Let me serve you properly." The bowl tilted, the crowd inhaled. The hot soup poured over her in a thick, scalding wave. Down her hair, across her face, into the fabric of her dress. The heat stung. The smell of butter and spices clung to her skin. Her curls flattened under creamy orange liquid. Gasps filled the room. 7 phones rose instantly, recording. 2 people covered their mouths in shock. One older man muttered, "Good Lord." But no one intervened. Braftoft threw his head back and laughed, deep, triumphant, ugly. "Now you look like you belong in the kitchen where you came from." Jordan stood perfectly still. Soup dripped from her chin. Her dress clung to her ribs. She blinked, clearing her eyes. She could have screamed, she could have broken, she could have run. Instead, she wiped her cheek with a slow swipe of her hand, then lifted her head. Tall, regal, unshaken. "Thank you, Mr. Braftoft," she said quietly. His laughter faltered. "What did you say?" "Thank you," she repeated. "You've been very instructive." She set the napkin down, turned, and walked away, leaving a line of dripping orange footprints behind her. Every step was deliberate, powerful, defiant. Braftoft barked out a laugh, trying to reclaim his confidence. "She'll forget it by tomorrow," he scoffed. "People like her don't make trouble." But trouble had already begun, and videos were already spreading. Because by the time Jordan reached the lobby, millions of strangers were about to witness the exact moment a billionaire destroyed his own empire. With a bowl of soup. The hotel lobby smelled faintly of citrus and polished marble, but Jordan barely noticed. Soup dripped from her hair and soaked into the towel a staff member handed her. The manager rushed toward her, flustered, pale, sweating. "Ms. Wells, I am so sorry," he said. "We can call the police, file a report, bring security, whatever you need." Jordan stared through the ballroom doors. She could still see Braftoft laughing, his shoulders shaking, surrounded by men who encouraged his cruelty. "No," she said softly. "There's no need. I'll handle it myself." The Uber driver did not even ask questions when she slid into the back seat with soup still running down her neck. He simply turned up the car's heat and handed her a box of tissues. The city lights streaked by as her phone buzzed and buzzed and buzzed. She finally looked. The first message was a 30-second video. Him, the bowl, the dump, the laughter, already at 50,000 views, posted 8 minutes ago. Then more, different angles, different captions. Braftoft exposed, justice for Jordan, soup assault. Jordan's face appeared in thumbnail after thumbnail. The moment the bisque hit, the moment she lifted her chin, the moment she didn't break. She dialed Maya. "You saw?" Jordan asked. "It's everywhere," Maya said. "Everywhere. It's spreading fast. I'm uploading every clip and tagging every outlet." "Good. Move forward with Protocol 7. There was a pause on the line. "And Jordan, that's the full takeover," Maya whispered. "Once we start, there's no turning back." "He dumped soup on my head and laughed," Jordan said, voice low and steady. "I've never been more certain." Maya inhaled sharply. "Understood. By morning, his world will burn." Jordan hung up, watching the city blur past. Comments were rolling in faster than she could read. "I know that man. He evicted my mom for no reason. He treated my husband the same way. He's finally exposed." Hundreds of employees, tenants, and victims were coming forward. By the time she stood inside her apartment, peeling off the ruined dress, the number had crossed 2 million. And then major news outlets chimed in. CNN, MSNBC, BBC, local stations, tech blogs, business networks. Every one of them leading with the same headline. "Billionaire caught on camera dumping hot soup on black woman at gala." Jordan stared at the screen, calm as a quiet storm. Her plan wasn't just working, it was accelerating. And while the world exploded, the man at the center of it slept peacefully. Completely unaware his empire had less than 12 hours left to live. On the other side of Manhattan, high above the city in a Fifth Avenue penthouse, Richard Braftoft slept like a man who believed the world adored him. He snored lightly, silk sheets twisted around him, oblivious to the digital wildfire consuming his reputation inch by inch. His phone buzzed on the nightstand at 6:30 a.m. He ignored it. It buzzed again, and then again, until the calls from his PR director, lawyer, and 3 board members piled up in frantic succession. Annoyed, he finally snatched the phone. "What?" he barked. "Sir, you need to look at Twitter," his PR director said, panic in her voice. The news, every major outlet. Richard, it's everywhere. What are you talking about? He snapped. The video from last night. 15 million views, worldwide trend, international coverage. You need to get ahead of this before… He hung up before she finished. Muttering curses, he opened his laptop and froze. CNN's homepage showed him in high-definition tipping soup over Jordan's head. MSNBC's headline read, Mogul's racist meltdown caught on 7 cameras. The New York Times article began, a glimpse into decades of unchecked power. He clicked the video. There he was, laughing. There she was, drenched. There the crowd was, silent. There the cameras were, recording. The comments hit like punches. Arrest him. Fire him. Shut his company down. Protect black women. This is who he really is. His wife burst into the room, face white with fury. Richard, what did you do? It's taken out of context, he shouted. Context? She screamed. You assaulted a woman on camera. Our phones are blowing up. My sisters, the club, our friends, everybody saw. He tried to stand tall, but his hands shook visibly. His phone rang again. The board chairman. Richard, we need to talk now. Look, it was a misunderstanding. I'm sure we can manage. Manage? The chairman hissed. Your actions wiped 47% off our stock value in 4 hours. Investors are fleeing. Advertisers pulling out. We've scheduled an emergency noon meeting. Attendance is not optional. The call ended. Then another message came, this time from his daughter, Madison. Dad, Tyler and I are releasing a statement condemning your actions. We're changing our last name. Don't contact us. Braftoft stared at the screen, as if it had struck him. His own children, his legacy, his kingdom, all slipping through his fingers. But the worst blow hadn't landed yet, because in just a few hours, Richard would finally learn who the woman he'd humiliated really was, and what she owned. By late morning, Richard Braftoft resembled a man aging in real time. His hands trembled. His skin had gone grey. His polished reputation, once impenetrable, now hung in shreds across every major network. But in his mind, there was one lifeline left. The CEK International merger. The $1.1 billion deal that was supposed to save his collapsing empire. If he could finalize that contract today, if he could pump the press full of glowing headlines about strategic growth and global partnership, maybe he could survive the public slaughter happening online. He straightened his tie with shaking fingers, forced on a smile so stiff it looked carved from stone, and entered the executive boardroom where CEK's representatives, David Carter and Sarah Rodriguez, waited. Let's make this official, Richard said, voice full of forced cheer. Yesterday was unfortunate, but business is business, right? David exchanged a glance with Sarah. One of those long, quiet looks where an entire conversation passes without sound. Mr. Braftoft, David began, we are not here to sign. Richard paused mid-chair pull. Come again? We're here to inform you, Sarah continued gently, that CEK International is terminating the merger agreement, effective immediately. Richard's chest tightened. Terminating? You can't terminate a $1 billion contract! Actually, David said, placing a folder on the table, we can, and we have. Section 14, paragraph 3. Your company violated the morality clause. This is absurd! Richard barked. You don't understand what I've built, what this deal means. Get your CEO on the phone, now! Sarah folded her hands. She's already aware. Then I need to speak to her personally, he demanded. I'll explain everything. She'll understand. Both representatives looked suddenly still. They weren't nervous. They weren't confused. They were waiting. She's actually arriving now, David said. Richard turned toward the door, breath hitching. The latch clicked, the door opened, and Jordan Wells walked in. Hair pulled back into a sleek bun, tailored charcoal suit, leather portfolio under her arm. Not a drop of fear in her eyes. Richard's face drained of color. You, he croaked. What are you doing here? Doing? Jordan walked calmly to the head of his conference table and sat, like she owned the air in the room. She placed her business card in front of him. He read it, then read it again. Jordan Wells, founder and CEO, Vertex Capital Holdings Board Chair, CEK International. The world tilted under his feet. This can't be real, he whispered. Jordan folded her hands, her gaze steady. No, Richard, she said softly. This is very real. And for the first time that day, Richard finally realized something terrifying. He hadn't humiliated a random guest. He had declared war on the woman who owned the empire he needed to survive. Richard stared at Jordan as if the universe had betrayed him personally. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words forming, just raw disbelief shaking through him. Jordan let the silence stretch. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't smirk, she simply watched him with the calm control of someone who had waited 5 years for this exact moment. SEC is yours? He finally whispered. Wholly owned subsidiary, Jordan replied evenly. Every meeting you begged for, every pitch you crafted, every projection you rehearsed. You were presenting to me, Richard, to me. He gripped the table to steady himself. I didn't know, he stammered. If I'd known who you were, I would have... There it is. Jordan leaned forward slightly. Your defense. If you'd known I was wealthy, you would have treated me differently. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, she asked quietly, when you told me I didn't belong, when you assumed I was staff, when you poured soup on my head, when you laughed? The room was ice. David and Sarah stood back, silent witnesses. Richard swallowed hard. Please. I'm not that kind of man. Jordan tapped her tablet. Video thumbnails popped up, one after another, 7 angles of him dumping soup on her, laughing, reveling in it. You were sober, she said. Accurate aim, steady hand, full control. I can show the footage if you'd like. No, he whispered, voice cracking. God, no. She changed the screen. Stock charts nosedived in real time. Your company opened at $62 this morning. It's now at $33. You've lost 47% of your company's value in 4 hours. He sank into his seat. Jordan continued, her tone clinical. Your top 3 investors have pulled out. Your banks are calling your loans. Your largest tenant just activated their termination clause. You have 12 class action notices filed in the last hour. Your board is meeting at noon to vote on your removal. The outcome will be unanimous. Richard shook his head violently. Please, there has to be a way to fix this. No, she said simply. There isn't. Then tell me what you want, he begged. Name it. I'll apologize, donate money, take courses, anything. Jordan stood. She reached into her portfolio and placed a single framed photograph on the table. An older black woman, kind eyes, work-worn hands, a gentle smile. My mother, Jordan said softly, Evelyn Wells. Richard's breath caught. Memory flickered. Recognition dawned. She cleaned your buildings for 20 years, Jordan continued. You fired her when she got sick, cut her insurance. She died 3 months later. His lips trembled. I didn't know. You didn't care, Jordan corrected. She was invisible to you. Just another black woman with a mop. She leaned closer. But she wasn't invisible to me, and what Jordan revealed next would shatter the last illusion Richard clung to. That any part of his empire, his legacy, or his future was still salvageable. Richard stared at the photograph as if the frame itself were burning him. Evelyn Wells. He remembered her now. Not her name, not her story, but her silhouette. A quiet woman who cleaned his executive floors, always polite, always invisible. He had never wondered about her life, or her struggles, or her health. Why would he? People like Richard rarely looked down unless it was to judge the person beneath them. Jordan's voice sliced through his spiraling thoughts. My mother scrubbed your floors, she said, emptied your trash, kept your offices spotless, and when she got cancer, your HR department dismissed her like she was a broken lamp. Richard swallowed hard. I'm sorry, I don't remember the circumstances. No, Jordan said firmly. You don't get to apologize now that your empire is crumbling. You don't get to say you didn't know. Every decision you've made, every cut, every firing, every eviction, created a pattern you built. She stepped back, giving him space to absorb the truth. But I learned from you, she continued. I learned how power works, how to move quietly, how to build strength behind closed doors. I learned exactly how long it takes for people like you to ignore someone, until one day, that someone is standing in your boardroom with the power to end you. Richard wiped sweat from his forehead, his voice cracked. Jordan, please, I have a family, a legacy. My mother had a family too, Jordan said, her voice suddenly soft but devastating. She had a daughter who watched her struggle to afford medication after you cut her insurance. The silence tightened like a noose. Jordan straightened. Your company will be bankrupt within 90 days. Your board will remove you in under an hour. Criminal charges will be filed before sundown. Everything you built by stepping on others, gone. He shook his head, desperate. There must be something, some way to undo this. Tell me what you want. Money, influence, a public apology, anything. Jordan paused at the door. For 5 years, Richard, all I've wanted was for you to understand consequences. She held his gaze. And you're about to. As she left, Richard's knees buckled. He slumped into his chair, trembling, unable to breathe. It felt like the walls were closing in, like the floor beneath him had turned to sand. He had thought she would forget. He had thought she wouldn't fight back. He had thought she didn't matter. He was wrong. But the worst wasn't over, because outside that boardroom, a crowd was already gathering, waiting to watch a billionaire's downfall in real time. Richard was escorted out of his office by 2 security guards, young, expressionless, unwilling to meet his eyes. The humiliation cut deeper than the cameras, deeper than the headlines. Employees lined the hallway. Some looked satisfied, some looked shocked, some looked away entirely. Not one stepped forward, not one spoke up. Outside the building, the chaos had grown into a spectacle. News vans, camera crews, protesters, reporters with microphones raised like weapons, signs waved in the air. Justice for Jordan Wells. Dump Braftoft, not people. Consequences matter. As Richard emerged, the crowd erupted. Mr. Braftoft, do you have a statement? Did you assault her because she's black? Are you stepping down? Are you facing hate crime charges? He shoved past them, jaw clenched, eyes burning. His car door slammed shut, muffling the shouting reporters. But the silence inside the vehicle felt worse, heavy, suffocating, final. His phone buzzed again. His lawyer. The DA will file charges this afternoon. You must surrender at 9 a.m. tomorrow. His accountant. Banks demand immediate payment of $47 million. His country club. Membership suspended effective immediately. His donors. Please remove our names from your website. He was drowning in alerts, each one another piece of his life, dissolving. When he finally reached his penthouse, he found Elizabeth waiting with luggage packed. Don't say anything, she said coldly. My lawyer sent your divorce papers 2 hours ago. Elizabeth, please. Save it. You humiliated a woman, mocked her, and laughed. The world saw who you really are. Where will you go? He asked helplessly. Somewhere you can't find me. Madison is coming with me. Tyler, too. Richard felt the floor tilt beneath him. My children? He whispered. Elizabeth's eyes softened for only a moment, but only a moment. They held a press conference at 3. They denounced you publicly. They're legally changing their last name. You aren't their father anymore, Richard. Not in name, not in legacy. The door clicked shut behind her. The penthouse felt enormous, empty, echoing, cold. He turned on the TV. Every channel showed him. Every clip replayed his cruelty. Every caption condemned him. And then he saw footage that made his breath hitch. Crowds outside his building holding photos of Jordan, chanting her name. The city he once controlled was turning against him. His empire had fallen. But tomorrow held a new nightmare. Because the justice system had watched the videos too. And they were preparing a courtroom where Richard would face consequences he couldn't pay his way out of. 3 months later, the federal courthouse buzzed like a shaken beehive. Reporters crowded the steps, camera lenses pointed toward the heavy wooden doors, as though waiting for a rare animal to emerge. People murmured, shuffled, whispered the same name over and over. Braftoft. The trial. He's finally being held accountable. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Former employees, tenants, activists, journalists, legal observers, even retired judges. Jordan sat quietly in the front row, wearing her mother's pearl earrings and a slate-grey suit. Her posture was steady, almost serene. She hadn't come for revenge, she came for truth. When Richard Braftoft entered, a hush fell across the room. He looked nothing like the powerful mogul who once strutted through marble lobbies. His hair had lost most of its colour. His suit hung loose on his frame. Deep lines carved his face, not from age, but from consequence. He did not look at Jordan. He couldn't. Judge Patricia Carter took the bench. Elegant, stern, and sharp-eyed, she radiated authority. "The People versus Richard Allen Braftoft," the clerk announced. "Charges include assault in the 3rd degree, aggravated harassment, and hate crime enhancement." The prosecutor, Monica Harris, a composed, brilliant black attorney, stood confidently before the jury. "Your Honor," she began, "this case is not about a moment of poor judgment. It is about a pattern, one that spans decades." She played the video, all 7 angles. The courtroom watched quietly as the soup poured over Jordan. Gasps fluttered across the benches. Even the judge's jaw tightened. Next came the witnesses. Maria Santos, the accountant fired after becoming pregnant. James Tyler, the manager repeatedly passed over for promotion. Kesha Washington, the employee who filed a harassment complaint that mysteriously disappeared. David Park, underpaid and silenced for years. Layer upon layer, a portrait formed, not of a businessman, but of a tyrant who walked through life unchallenged because the world believed he was untouchable. Then Monica called Jordan. She stepped onto the stand with calm grace. After swearing in, she described the gala, not dramatically, not resentfully, but factually, with dignity. And then she held up her mother's photograph. "My mother spent 20 years cleaning his buildings. She died without the insurance he took from her. When he poured soup on me, it wasn't just humiliation. It was a reminder of everything people like her endure." Several jurors wiped tears. The defense offered little. There was no narrative strong enough to counter truth caught on 7 cameras. 4 hours later, the jury returned. "We find the defendant guilty on all counts." Richard's face crumpled. His fingers shook. His last illusion, innocence, shattered. But the courtroom wasn't done with him yet. Because sentencing day would deliver a punishment Richard never imagined in his darkest nightmares. 2 weeks later, the courtroom was even more crowded. Word had spread that sentencing would be historic. Monitors were set up in the hallway to broadcast the judge's ruling to the overflow crowd. Richard entered, wearing a suit that looked borrowed, his shoulders slumped, his eyes hollow. A man who once bulldozed neighborhoods now looked barely able to stand. Judge Carter reviewed the charges one final time. "Mr. Braftoft," she said, "you wielded your wealth like a weapon. You humiliated people who could not fight back. This court exists to correct that imbalance." Richard's lawyer pleaded for mercy. "This was a lapse in judgment," he argued. "My client has suffered enough." The judge's eyebrow rose sharply. "Assault is not a lapse. Racism is not a lapse. Abuse of power is not a lapse. It is a choice, one your client made repeatedly." Richard's throat worked as he struggled to speak. I regret everything," he whispered. "I'm not the man I was that night." Judge Carter leaned forward. "Sir, the video shows you laughing." Silence blanketed the room. "This court sentences you to 18 months in federal prison," she continued. "A $50,000 fine, 3 years of supervised release, 500 hours of community service with organizations serving communities you harmed." Gasps erupted. One reporter choked on air. A spectator whispered, "Finally." But Judge Carter wasn't finished, and given your decades of discrimination against tenants, I recommend placement in the facility where many families impacted by your evictions have loved ones incarcerated. Perhaps proximity will teach you empathy. The gavel fell. Richard sagged, as if his spine had vanished. A security officer steadied him. His empire's collapse accelerated like an avalanche. The civil case followed soon after. 23 employees and 15 tenants joined Jordan in a class action. Emails surfaced, racist directives, inflated rents for families of color, mocking texts to executives, clear patterns the jury could not ignore. The verdict was thunderous: $50 million compensatory, $200 million punitive, total $250 million. Bankruptcy came next, properties auctioned, art collections seized, penthouse repossessed, vacation homes, yachts, cars, gone. And in one poetic twist of justice, Vertex Capital bought several of the buildings he lost, at a fraction of their value. Jordan now owned the place where her mother once scrubbed floors. She didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She simply renamed it the Evelyn Wells Community Center. On opening day, hundreds gathered as Jordan stood at the podium, navy dress billowing softly in the breeze. She tapped the microphone, looked into the crowd, and smiled gently. This center honors every person Richard tried to erase. Cheers filled the streets. But Jordan wasn't done. Her mother's story, and her own, would soon change the entire country's conversation about power, justice, and whose lives matter. The ribbon fluttered in Jordan's hand as she stood before the newly renovated building at 447 Riverside Drive. Once, her mother had scrubbed its floors. Now its walls carried a different purpose, a different power, one carved from justice, resilience, and memory. A banner stretched across the entrance, the Evelyn Wells Community Center. Hundreds filled the sidewalk. Families, former tenants of Braftoft's properties, community leaders, journalists, young entrepreneurs eager to begin a new chapter. Cameras flashed as Jordan stepped up to the podium, the breeze tugging gently at her navy dress. "My mother believed in dignity," she began softly. "She believed in working hard, even when no one noticed her, even when the world treated her like background noise." The crowd quieted, leaning in. "She taught me that how you treat people when you think no one is watching reveals everything about who you really are." A murmur of agreement rippled through the audience. Richard Braftoft believed people like her didn't matter, that they were invisible, disposable, replaceable. Jordan's voice hardened, not with anger but with truth. He was wrong. Applause swelled, steady and emotional. Jordan gestured to the building behind her. "This center will offer what he tried to take: opportunity, dignity, and a place to grow. The top floors now house 50 affordable units. Families who were pushed out can return home." Cheers erupted. "The second floor is a job training center. The ground floor is a small business incubator, and inside these walls, no one is invisible." Her voice grew stronger. "For years, people like Richard believed power meant immunity. But real power, the kind that lasts, is built on justice." The crowd roared. Some wiped tears, others raised fists. Jordan lifted a pair of oversized scissors and cut the ribbon. Confetti burst into the air as people surged forward to enter the center. But Jordan stayed outside a moment longer, watching the transformation she had created. Not out of revenge, out of restoration. But even as the community celebrated, Jordan knew the story wasn't truly over. Because somewhere far from the cheers, the man who tried to break her was living a very different ending. A cold wind swept through the courtyard of the federal prison in Pennsylvania. Richard Braftoft shuffled across the cracked pavement, his orange jumpsuit stark against the gray surroundings. He'd lost weight, lost confidence, lost everything. Today he was assigned kitchen duty. The irony was cruel, almost elegant. The man who once dumped hot soup on a black woman for amusement now served meals to inmates without making eye contact. In the cafeteria, guards murmured as news played on the mounted television. Cameras showed crowds celebrating the grand opening of the Evelyn Wells Community Center. Richard froze. There she was. Jordan, speaking with grace, strength, and something he never possessed. True leadership. As the broadcast continued, a hush fell over the inmates. One of them muttered, "A billionaire taking down a billionaire? Never thought I'd see the day." Another shook his head. "Shouldn't have messed with the wrong woman." Richard lowered his gaze. His hands trembled as he ladled soup into bowls. Behind him, an inmate whispered to another, "He used to pour this stuff on people." Someone else answered, "Not anymore." Richard felt the words like blows. He looked down at the ladle, so similar to the one he had used to humiliate Jordan. Now the weight of it felt like judgment. He wasn't untouchable, he wasn't feared, he wasn't respected. He was just another inmate in a system he once believed he ruled above. Outside, the world Jordan built continued to rise, strong, vibrant, unstoppable. Inside, Richard's world shrank to a single truth. He had created his own downfall, not Jordan, not the cameras, not the courts. He had poured his own punishment, brick by brick, decision by decision, cruelty by cruelty. And Jordan. She didn't waste a second thinking about him. She was too busy changing lives. On the night of the community center opening, as the crowd left and the lights dimmed, Jordan stood alone for a moment and whispered toward the sky. "We did it, Mom." Her mother's memory lived not in pain, but in power. When a cruel man tried to shame her, he didn't realize he was setting the stage for his own destruction. Because real justice doesn't always arrive loudly, but it always arrives. If this story moved you, if you believe consequences matter, if you believe dignity isn't optional, then hit like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to be reminded. Power without compassion collapses. But power built on justice? That changes the world. Comment below, "Justice wins," if you believe stories like this must be told. Before you go, wait until you hear what happened when a millionaire tried humiliating a pregnant black waitress, and the 5 words she said that turned his entire world upside down. Watch next. Millionaire humiliated pregnant black waitress. Her 5 words left him speechless.